This conference will now be recorded.
So last time we understood what are tables, right? So we created a customers table. Cust ID we used from here, and then we used others from the first name, everything we used in the from the uh, from the upper layer, and then we populated through a Excel sheet, through a CSV, and whatever we populated through through the import, we named it as ICUS01 because we'll be doing that through different sources, isn't that? And sorry, and this is basically we did manually. So this is how we create the table, and I hope you guys have tried this. So that is how the data type. So where did we do data type? Tesla data customers, and then we also created as part of last exercise. No, our main flow, it's our automobile. I don't know why I put in automobile infosec here. Should be a flow. Should be info FL flow. Anyway, so no, this is our main flow, which has the two components: customer information, the vehicle information, and the we also did the status. So we did a good amount of exercise. Uh, so now let's see a few other things. Okay, so let's see. Did you guys configure database?
Yes.
Okay, so let's see a few components of the database. Let's understand what's a blob. Let's understand a few components of different tables. And the initial exercise I had given you, right? There was, I mean, the initial document, there is a document which says PRPC concepts, few concepts. If you open the document, you'll find a lot of things about database also. A lot of other things like flow and everything I've written, which is basic concepts that you just need to understand. So you need to configure the server, which is quite easy. That document is already there. So if we go to this database, so you have to understand. Let's understand different tables, and uh, so I think I've already told you. So if you look at 7.2 and 7.4, I think from version 6 to 7, there have been they have done few changes in the schema. Initially when we were talking about 7.2. Initially, when we were talking about 7.2, we had, uh, just talk about 7.2. So we had PC underscore, PR underscore, PR4 underscore. What are these? These are the prefixes of table. So when the table is prefixed with PC underscore, it is basically for a class. Whereas table PR underscore is basically for a table. And PR4 is for system defined. This is how it was there in uh, version 7.2. In version 7.4, you see few more. You see PI also, which is for integration tables, and there is something called as P direct they have put. So P address, P contact, uh, P organization. So these are few P role. They have created few with P underscore also, but then you see PC. PC, when you see PC, you should understand when you create a class in PEGA, the corresponding table gets created here. Okay, so I'll tell you, we'll come to that in detail. Then PR4 is something which is used by the system. PR is something, reference tables is basically when you create a table inside PEGA, it creates PR. So these are the different kind of prefixes. There is something called as PRPC ignite server address. So this also, I don't know whether it's there in 7.2, but these are the different prefixes you have. So in 7.4, what do you see? You also have P underscore, and then there is PI, which is for integration. Okay, so these are the prefixes now created. Now let's see more details. Okay, let's go to the application. Now, what you have to remember in PEGA is every class that you create in PEGA will have a corresponding table. Why is that required? So suppose I create a class XYZ, okay, or if you talk about a class called as bank. What's it? Okay, so once if you create a class called as bank accounts, okay, and if the bank account class has different properties or attributes, so what are the different attributes a bank account can have? That it could be account ID, the account type, the IFSC code, the what do you call the transaction type, all this kind of various attributes the bank account class will have. So we have to store those kind of attributes values. So what they do is basically they create exactly the same table at the backend, so that whenever we create an instance of those classes, that table can store those records and then use it. So in PEGA, will always find that a class, whenever you get a class, a corresponding table is created, and there is a mapping rule which says a table, however, which the mapping rule. What is a mapping rule? The mapping rule will state which table is connected to which class. Okay, so PEGA will whenever you create a class, a corresponding table is always created, and vice versa also. Suppose you create a table. Suppose you go to this data layer, data type, and you create a table, a corresponding class is always created, so that a mapping is always there. So when I created the table, you must have seen different things, right? When you created this table, you saw this, you saw a report definition got created. There are other things like data type, data pages which got created. There is one report definition got created. So when you create a data type, you should always see all these things. Along with that, you'll also see a database mapping rule. What is that? It maps the table with the class, which is very important, right? Every map, the mapping is very important. Okay, so now let's see. So this is a class group. What is a class group? This is also a class. It just the name is like this, called as class group because it shows the hierarchy, right, from where it is derived. But this is also a class. So suppose I go to right click. This is my work layer, right? Suppose I go and right click and go to definition. So we go to this definition. Now if I want to understand, so this is the ID, Tesla auto work, and this is my class name, right? See, it's written class name, right? Now if I want to know, understand which is the corresponding table linked to this, I should go down, and there is something called as test connection. Go and click here. So it will say Tesla auto work is mapped to PC Tesla auto work. So this is how you can determine which class is mapped to which table. So similarly, if I go to this and go to customers and go to view definition, see, I'm going to the table. Okay, so again it has a class. A table, when you say customers, it has a class. This is the Tesla data customers is the class name. Again, if you go test connection, it is mapped to PR Tesla data customers. You getting that? This issues, this comes in 7.4. I don't know why 7.8 doesn't show, and all these variables is something that you know which they have put in the form. So let's not worry about that. So what is the difference? Now I went to a data type table and I check the table name. It starts with PR, right? And when I went to the class, it starts with prefix with PC. So that is what I was telling you, right? So if you look at my notes, this is PC. When I created a class, it's mapped to a class called as PC underscore. When I create a table, it's mapped to a class called as PR underscore. Okay, that's how you should understand. So let's see that. So let's go to the database. So we created our our work group is PC, when we created work, no work, we have uh, Tesla automobile work. That is our implementation there. So when we created that, that is a class group. So if a class group is there, then you should start with PC. So let's see where it is. So you should see PC. See, this is my main implementation class. So if I right click, so I'll see these are the instances which are created. Whenever I run a flow, it shows me C hyphen 45, 55, 65, all those, right? See, these are the all instances which are created and they are stored in a table called as. So when I say class PC, so remember the name of the class group prefix with PC is your table name. So you can go there and find the details of what you created. So I'll tell you a few important columns which are there. So this is application, that is fine. This is a version, that is fine. The most important columns are something called as px obj class. So px instance class name is characters, that's fine. No px update. So there is something called as, so this is the urgency. Okay, px urgency work. This is important. This will play around when we do something called as SLA. This is quite very important. PYID. Remember when I created report definition, we use PYID. This is case ID. Okay. And this is shows your organization division, everything. That is fine. Now this is the PY status work which we played around, right? Remember we had this many cases and we updated the status. And this is very important. Last two are very important. The one which you see, the second last is PZ key. This is the primary key of the table. So PZ key is used in many places, and PZ key is, suppose I put here. I can't edit this. Where is the run key? Okay, so this is the PZ key, and this is very important. These two columns, three columns are basically very important. One is your PYID, then comes PZ key, and then the last column is PZPV stream. So these three columns are very important, and there are other columns like create date and everything which you see, but I need to explain you these three columns in detail. So what are these columns basically? So PYID, you know what, right? What is PYID, Sudhakar?
That would be the kind of primary key for
No, the primary key is PZ key. PYID is the case ID. Correct. Samir is correct. PYID is a case ID. So whenever you create these cases, right? Whenever you run any flow, you get all these cases which is automatically created, right? So these are called as a case ID. This case ID could be same also. Suppose you create a new version, you remove from one version to another. The case ID could be same. So, so the case ID is PYID, but PYID is always not unique. So there is PZ key. So it holds, if you look at this, it holds the class group name plus the case ID. This is the prefixed with the class group name plus case ID. And when we create version, there will be also one more prefix. Sorry, one more concatenation, and that will be your GMT. There will be a timestamp. So PZ key is class group name plus your case ID plus your timestamp. Okay, now we are not created any version, so you won't see that. When we do a first import or export, you will see how PZ key is having all those things. So PZ key is the primary key. So when why I'm emphasizing on this is because whenever you want to query it work table, this is the implementation tray, right? Everything, all your transactions are going to come here, right? So suppose you want to query a work table, okay, you have to make sure you query with PZ key. Okay, and once we have many exercises which will emphasize on PZ key, so you'll understand the importance of PZ key, and equally PYD is also very important. Okay, then we come to this. Now what is this? PZPV stream. This is a blob. Okay, now what is the blob? You know what's a blob, right? It's a binary large objects which in any database stores information. Now why are we talking about this? Now if you look at this table, so what all did I create? I created one assignment which had first name, last name, age, gender. Then we created one more assignment which had a win number, claim amount. Remember all those all those kind of columns we created, right? All those kind of properties we created, classes we created. We ran our flow. So it's supposed to go and store somewhere in the database, is it not? So it is supposed to store in the work layer. But if you look at this our class group, this is our implementation layer and this is the table. But do you see any column? Do you see age, gender? Do you see anywhere win number? You don't see anywhere, right? None of the places will show, right? So to manage, so transactions are quite heavy in PEGA. Suppose you work for an organization, transactions are going to be very heavy. There'll be huge number of records, and it becomes very difficult for PEGA to manage and optimize things. So what PEGA has done is all those things which you created, win number, claims, age, gender, is stored in this blob, and PEGA maintains this blob, and PEGA will be uh, exploding. When I say blob, it is a big large objects, right? It is stored in kind of a stream like this, which you saw, right? Kind of binary stream, so which is not readable from outside. So PEGA will be responsible for breaking this block and giving back to you information and showing you this. But you have to understand that every rule, suppose you want to show this information, you'll have to use a few methods. There is a rule called as activities. Activities are just simple as Java methods or Java functions. So these kind of things, when we do activities, we'll be using obj browse, obj open, and all those kind of functions, which will help you to open this blob and show it. So there are other means also to do it. You can, this is something called as exposing columns. Okay, so you can expose your gender, age, everything also here. When you expose, the columns will come here. But PEGA does not recommend that because it may give you performance issues. So there is one chapter where we do report optimization, or we also call it as column exposing. So I can expose column of age. When I expose the column age, it will break up from the blob and it will come here. When I expose column first name, it will come here. Expose column win number, it will come here. So it will come out of the blob and show you here. So it's quite simple. You just have to right click and say expose. I'll show you that this will be doing in later chapters. So once you expose columns, it will be available here and it will be not part of the blob, but there will be performance implications. So So but that's why PEGA has stored in this blob. Now how to read this blob is through activity methods, which we will see. Okay. So you have to understand this three things: PYID, PZ key, PZ PV stream. Whenever anybody stays, where does PEGA store the information of the work in the implementation there? You should know PZ PV stream is stored in the blob. And of course, we can various methods to extract information, which is what we are going to do in the next few chapters. But you should know all this. Okay. So you understood, guys? You guys understood this? Can we move to other tables? Samir,
Yes.
Sudhakar, any question on this?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't have any
Yeah, go.
question.
Okay. Okay. So so let's go to our next part. So we created customers table, right? Right. Tell me what is the table name of that customer? I explained a few things, right? How to understand what's a table, how to understand how a class is mapped. I'm just sipping my tea. Just a minute. Can you tell me which table will that customers? You remember data type we created, na? Customers. Which table will be mapped to? Hello, can you hear me? Sorry, somehow my internet went away, so I connected through my mobile. So okay, did you understand my question, guys?
About some table names, right?
Did you understand? Yeah, so we created a table called as customers, is it not? Where will we create a table called as customers, right? Where did we create? This is the table called customers, right? Now, which will be this table? Where should I find this table? What will the name of the table be?